Hello, welcome back to Metalsmithing. This is Miss Simonson, and today we will be talking about earrings. We're going to start this and do this in two parts though. So part one is going to be making ear wires or ear findings out of a single piece of wire. And then part two, we're going to talk about how to add beads, to add accents, and some different styles that you can do. Okay, so let's get started. So obviously I have my three main tools here. I've also got my looping pliers, ruler. I have a rawhide mallet here, and I use this to work harden things. And then I also have a ball peen hammer. So with both of those, I need an anvil, right? And a piece of cloth to put underneath said anvil to not try to deafen anybody. So let's get started. So we're going to start with 20 gauge wire, and that is the general standard size for ear wires, okay? You can use 18 gauge. It might be a little uncomfortable for some people. You can also go to 22 gauge, but I would definitely not use 22 gauge if you are using something like copper, as that is the softest of the metals we use. So I would definitely recommend nickel if you have it in 20 gauge. I've also got some 18 gauge copper and some 24 gauge brass that we're going to be using. So I'm going to cut a piece of this. And the one thing that all of those earrings and ear findings had in common that I just showed you is that they all start with an eye pin. Okay, so an eye pin is this entire piece of wire before it's bent or shaped in any way. So we're going to start to do that. So I'm going to flush cut this. And for a basic French hook here, I use about 1.5 inches to 2 inches of wire. So I'm going to go ahead and cut that. I'll flush cut this side. Match these two up. In theory, it's very wiggly today. Okay, and I'll cut this under here. All right. So I'm going to start with my round nose pliers. And the mark is disappearing, but there's still a faint one there. So that's where I'm going to make my loop so that I know that they're both the same size. When you're in class, if you want to use a pair of the looping pliers, you are more than welcome. Just let me know and I will get a pair out and sanitized for you. What's awesome about these is that you can work both wires at the same time, because these little round loops they're not tapered, right? So if I put both of my wires here and like this, the wire on this side is going to have a smaller loop than the wire on this side. So you can only work one wire at a time on your round nose pliers versus two at a time on those. But since I know you guys don't have those at home, most likely, I'll use my chain nose. So I've got my wire in there at the mark. I'm holding and bracing here, and I'm going to turn, release, come back, and finish that loop. Now, right now, that loop is completely on this side of the wire. So for some designs, that's fine. I like to center the loop on the wire for this kind of thing. So I'm going to put my round nose pliers in that loop on this side, right up against the bottom there. I'm going to use this finger to brace, and I'm going to rotate my right hand back just a hair to center that loop on top of the wire. And if it opens up at all, you can just kind of work it closed. So I'm going to do that to both wires. And so this one here, I rotated a little bit too far back. So to fix that, I'm just going to go ahead. I could use my round nose for these too, but I'm just going to go ahead and use my chain nose to put that into the right place. So I've got that started. So from here, I'm going to use the back of my round nose pliers. And I want to make that second bend about 1/2 inch from this one. The reason for that is because, you know, this is the part that sits on your earlobe. Most people have earlobes that are about 1/2 inch long or so from the piercing. So if I made that loop right there, down here, it would not fit very well. So you can measure this out if you want and mark your wire. That's fine. I don't do that. So I'm going to hold it at the back of my round nose pliers. And this loop where it opens is facing away from me. So I want to push this wire that same direction. And that way when you're wearing this, that open side doesn't show. So I'm just going to bring that around. Go a little bit past and bring it back out. Okay. So I want to do the same thing on this one. So I'm going to put it in here and eyeball it right now. But now I can take this one and just kind of look, and I want to make sure that I get as close as possible. This is what takes a lot of practice, I think, is just making sure that you're getting this at the right spot. And I think that's about right. So I'm going to push that this way because I just looked, and that loop, that opening is over here. So I may have just messed it up. Wouldn't be the first time. You can see I kind of got the edge of my round nose pliers there, but the bend is in the right spot. So I can fix that by just putting it back on there and just reshaping it. And I'm just pinching to make that more round. So with earrings like this, or ear wires, I like to look at the bottom of that loop, and I come straight across, and I will make a bend up, like so. And I'm going to trim this off, because that's a little too much. And what this little bend does is it makes it a little bit easier to put into the earlobe, and it also adds a little bit of security. So if you were to use it like this, if you had like a shirt that had a collar on it or a turtleneck, that might like rub up against it and push that earring out. So this not only makes it easier to put into your ear, but it doesn't hang quite as low. And if it does start to get pushed out of your ear, that curve will kind of catch it too. So I know I need to do the same thing to this one. I line myself up with the bottom of that loop, make a bend. And I want to cut these at the same point. All right. So here we have our French ear hooks. I don't know why they're French. That's just what they tell me. All right. So the next step to this, before I add anything below here, is going to be to work harden these. And I have two options here. So with my rawhide hammer, I can hammer against that curve right there, which is where you need to work harden it. With this leather rawhide hammer, when I use my anvil with that, it does not flatten or add texture to the wire, okay? My ball peen hammer, on the other hand, because it's rounded, on this side is going to add like little dimples, and on this side it's just going to flatten the wire. So two different hammers, obviously two different uses. So you can use this side for adding the work hardening on your ear wire here. I personally kind of like these. So I'm going to use my blanket here, put it under my anvil. And now you can see that this has a ton of texture. So I'm going to actually flip that over, because that texture, even with the rawhide mallet, it would transfer to my metal. So I like this nice smooth side. I'm going to hold both sides, the ear hook side and the loop so that when I use my rawhide mallet, it doesn't open up. I like to do both sides. Okay. And now that ear wire is really nice and strong. So let's do this one. Lost it for a sec. Again, I'm holding both sides of that. So let me show you the difference between what this looks like versus what this side looks like. Okay, so it's especially important to hold both sides of this when you're going to use your chasing hammer. So hopefully you can see how that flattened the wire there. I mean, it's work hardened too. It's nice and strong. So they both give you a work hardened ear wire, but one flattens and one does not. Okay, just kind of depends on what you're wanting out of your design. So first one down, let's move on. So for something like this, I mean, it is literally basically the same exact design as this one, except instead of using my round nose pliers, I used my chain nose pliers here at the back. So I hope you can see this, but it's tapered from here to the end. So here at the back, I can work both wires at the same time, which is nice. But it's essentially the same type of design as I did with this, but I used back here. So I'm not really going to go through and show you that one. It's, like I said, the same thing, but with chain nose. Okay. So let's go to something like this. This kind of ear wire is great if you have just like a simple sort of design that you have at the bottom. And if you have your hairstyle is going to play a little bit of a role in the type of earrings that you might wear. So that's something to keep in mind. Yeah. So for something like this, we're going to need more wire than we did with this style. Okay. So I'm going to use about 4 inches or so of nickel for that. So I will start by flush cutting it and visually make that cut. Line the two up. Make my cut down here. Okay. So again, I'm going to start with an eye loop. And I'm looking at the shape of this wire. It's already got some natural curving. So I'm going to use that to my advantage and start my loop and turn it into that curve. And I am not going to straighten that as I did previously. I'm going to let that loop stay just where it is. Okay. So, got those two started. I'm going to go ahead and pick them, try to pick them both up. And given that this is kind of a more organic style, I am going to work both sides at the same time. And just come in with my round nose pliers and make a bend there. So I'm going to hold on to them while I push with this finger, and I'm pushing towards myself. And I'm also with this finger pushing away so that when I slide down the wire, it adds a little bit of a curve. I'll do the same up here. Oh, there we go. So I would use the rawhide hammer or the chasing hammer on this part here to work harden those, and then they would be ready for use. So let's do something a little different. last year I made a bunch of these, and they were literally the best-selling earrings I had. So if you want to make something like this, what we're going to do, and this is where the ruler comes in handy. So I'm going to cut and measure some wire. First I'm going to go ahead and cut 2 pieces. I think these are close to 5 inches. I'll measure here in just a second. All right, let's see how right I am. Kind of straighten this one out. Dang. All right, 5 1/4. So I want to straighten these out a little bit. I'm just holding on one side and using my hands to just kind of pull along there. And it not only straightens it, but it also kind of work hardens it a little bit. And then what I want to do is make sure both ends are flush cut, and they are. And I want to measure and mark this at, I think 1.5 inches was too big. So I'm going to do 1 inch. Going to go up 1 inch and mark it, and I want to make sure it's actually transferred. I want to do this 3 times to both wires. Okay. So because my chain nose pliers are the same size back here, I'm going to work both wires at the same time. And that way I know that even if I get off my measurements just a little bit, they're both going to have the same bend at the same spot. So there's my mark. Go to the back, and I'm going to push that to a 45-degree angle. I'm going to come to this next mark. So honestly, I could have just marked one wire. And I'm going to make the same sort of bend. I'll come to my next mark, and I'll do that one more time. So you can see that, like especially this one, it is not flat at all. So I'll use my rawhide hammer on my anvil to flatten that all out. And then I could cut this wire here and just wear this kind of like as a hoop. So this is the part that sits in my earlobe. Or I can add a little loop here and add a spiral or a bead, almost anything really. So let me show you how we would flatten that. So you can see obviously now it's not sitting flat on here. So let's grab my wire. I'm going to go to the back so I can pinch the 2 open ends and hold those in place. Flip it over, hammer my finger. So I'm doing both sides. And now you can see it's much more flat. There's that shape I'm looking for. Now I'm just going to work my way around. Okay, so that is work hardened. It's all flat now. And again, I can add a spiral or some sort of bead drop, herringbone. Sky's the limit. Only your imagination is holding you back. So I'm going to do the same thing on this guy. Hold that right down there. So you are not limited as to the shapes that you create these ear wires from. Okay, so you can do like an open teardrop shape. Oh, come on. There we go. You can do a spiral. Okay, I'm going to hold those two ends together. Hammer that out. This one wasn't as bad as the other. All right. So there we have some square hoops. So there's just tons of options to this. And when you have something like, here, I'll do one. Real quick like. And I'm just going to do one. I'm going to do, oh shoot, two different things, but only one of them, okay? Just to save some time here. So, on this one here, I could work both wires at the same time. And I'll come back here. So this will be the part that goes through your ear. And this I could use something to shape on. Just so I know they get to about the same size. Okay, so this side needs to be flush cut. But this could be your earring, right? So this is the part that goes into your earlobe. And then you could, if you could put like a bead or a drop or a spiral on there and loop that in there, or just wear it like this. It's an ultralight hoop. If I was going to wear something like this though, I would actually use my chasing hammer to kind of flatten this in so that if this was pushed out for some reason, this would actually catch. So that's a whole nother earring style or ear wire style. You can also do something, like I said, with the spiral. Ouch. So I'm just starting an open spiral here. And these are a little more challenging because you have to pretty much work your wires at separate times. So then this would slide into your earlobe, and so it would sit, you could rotate it so that it's sitting like this, and that's kind of hidden behind your ear. That's a super fun design. So there's a ton of options. You know, really, use your imagination, come up with something fun and new, and you'll be happy you did. I promise. So these are just some of the things we've learned to make today. So we're going to do part 2, and that is where we're going to add beads, add color, and add some fun. See you on the other side.